Neonatal resuscitation.
What is a neonate or newborn?
Neonate is a baby who is within 28 days of life, irrespective of the gestational age or irrespective of the birth weight.
What is a preterm?
So, if we classify the neonates based on gestational age, they can be classified as preterms, terms, or postterms. Preterms are born at gestational age less than 37 weeks. Terms are 37 completed weeks to 41 weeks 6 days, and postterms are after 42 weeks of completed gestational age. Now, preterms can be classified into extremely preterm, early preterm, and late preterm. Extremely preterms are less than 28 weeks, early preterm is 28 to 33 weeks 6 days, and late preterm is 34 to 36 weeks 6 days.
What is low birth weight?
Birth weight classification. So, normal birth weight is 2500 grams to 4000 grams. Low birth weight is less than 2500 grams. Very low birth weight is less than 1500 grams, and extremely low birth weight is less than 1000 grams. This birth weight classification is irrespective of the gestational age. Similarly, classification of gestational age is irrespective of the birth weight.
What is resuscitation?
Resuscitation are the efforts at delivery designed to help the newborn make the respiratory and circulatory transitions that must be accomplished immediately after birth. So basically, resuscitation is helping the newborn to make the respiratory and circulatory changes. Now, the incidence in normal neonates is only 10% who require some assistance, and less than 1% require extensive resuscitation.
What are the goals of resuscitation?
Primary goal, as we discussed, is to ensure airway and respiration. If we see adult resuscitation, it is cardiac, airway and breathing, but in neonates it is airway, breathing and circulation. So other goals, if we see, there are 4 other goals. First is to minimize immediate heat loss. Second is establishing normal respiration and lung expansion. Third is increasing arterial PO2, and fourth is supporting adequate cardiac output. Actually, the body temperature of fetus is 0.5 degrees Celsius more than that of the mother. So therefore, after delivery, it is very important to maintain the body temperature and prevent hypothermia.
What are the indications to be ready for resuscitation?
The first is evidence of non-reassuring fetal status. So if we see sinusoidal pattern or absent fetal heart rate variability with late deaccelerations, recurrent variable deaccelerations or bradycardia, or there is history of acute perinatal event like placental abruption, cord prolapse, or abnormal fetal testing, or a scalp pH less than 7.2, or there is history of fetal movement, decreased fetal movement, or diminution on growth, or abnormalities of umbilical vessels or Doppler flow studies, or there is evidence of fetal disease or potential serious conditions like meconium staining of the amniotic fluid, prematurity, post-maturity, anticipated low birth weight or high birth weight, major congenital anomalies diagnosed prenatally, hydrops fetalis, and multiple gestation. And there are labor and delivery conditions also, like significant vaginal bleeding, abnormal fetal presentation, prolonged or unusual labor, concern about a possible shoulder dystocia. So these are the conditions we saw. First was evidence of non-reassuring fetal status, evidence of fetal disease or potentially serious conditions, and labor and delivery conditions.
What are the necessary equipments?
So the equipments which are necessary for neonatal resuscitation, first is radiant warmer with procedure table or bed. The delivery room temperature should be around 26 degrees Celsius, and for preterms, plastic wrap should be used. You can see this is the radiant warmer. This is the plastic wrap for the preterms. We have to ensure that when we keep the preterm in the plastic wrap, we should keep it wet, not dry, not after drying. Immediately as the preterm is born, we have to keep in the plastic wrap. A blended oxygen source is required, which should be adjustable between 21 to 100% FiO2 with adjustable flow meter and adequate length of tubing. This is the pulse oximeter. Then flow inflating bag with adjustable pop-off valve or self-inflating bag with reservoir. So these are the self-inflating bags. One is for preterm, other one is for term. The first one is of 250 ml, second one is of 500 ml. And these are the face masks of appropriate sizes. These are the reservoirs. They are of two types. First one is the bag reservoir and second one is the tube reservoir. Reservoirs will help in the increasing concentration of the oxygen. This is a bulb syringe or mucus extractor for suctioning. We can also use suction machine. This is the stethoscope. Laryngoscope with number 000 and number 1 blades with extra batteries. We have to ensure that laryngoscopes should not be kept open or on because the bulb may become heated. Uniform diameter ET tubes of 2.5 number, 3 number and 3.5 number. 2 of each size should be kept. These are the ET tube stickings. Umbilical catheterization tray with 3.5 and 5 French catheters. Syringes of size 1, 3, 5, 10 and 20 ml and needles, T connectors and stopcocks. Drugs we include epinephrine and normal saline. We should have a transport incubator with battery operated heat source and portable blended oxygen supply if the delivery room is not close to the nursery. This is the transport incubator.
What are the universal precautions?
Universal precautions should be taken every time while attending the delivery. Exposure to blood or other body fluids is inevitable in the delivery room. Universal precautions must be practiced by wearing caps, goggles or glasses, gloves and impervious gowns until the cord is cut and the newborn is dried and wrapped.
What questions should you ask before every birth?
So we ask 4 questions before every birth. First is, what is the expected gestational age? So if it is a preterm, then 2 people are required for resuscitation. Is the amniotic fluid clear? How many babies are expected? So suppose 2 babies are expected, then 2 pediatricians are required. Are there any additional risk factors?
What personnel should be present at delivery?
Every birth should be attended by at least 1 qualified individual. If risk factors are present, at least 2 qualified people should be present solely to manage the baby.
What are the behavioral skills required?
First is to know your environment. We should know what are the conditions and which equipments are available. Use available information. Anticipate and plan. Clearly identify a team leader. Communicate effectively. Delegate workload optimally. Allocate attention wisely. Use available resources. Call for additional help when needed. Maintain professional behavior. This is the algorithm which we will discuss later on also. So first, when the baby is born at birth, we have to see whether it is full term or preterm, how is the tone, And is the baby breathing or crying? If answer to all the three questions is yes, then the baby will stay with the mother for routine care, warm and maintain normal temperature, position airway, clear secretions if needed, dry, and then we will do ongoing evaluation. So we can see that the baby is kept in skin to skin contact with the mother.
Which image shows the correct way to position a newborn's head to open the airway?
So we can see that first is the sniffing position, second is incorrect, it is the hyperextension, third is incorrect, it is flexion, and fourth is the correct position, sniffing position, in which we use shoulder roll also. As the head is large, we use shoulder roll. So here we can see that B is the correct position, first is hyperextension and C is flexion. You can see while suctioning we have to first suction the mouth and then we have to suction the nose, as M comes before N, and pressure of suction catheter should be 80 to 100 millimeter Hg. This is the bulb suction used. Then wet skin promotes rapid body cooling, so therefore we have to dry the baby and remove wet linen to prevent heat loss, and you have to stimulate the baby. Also, gentle tactile stimulation will initiate breathing. Here we can see that heart rate is assessed by listening with a stethoscope. Alternative methods for assessing heart rate are pulse oximeter and ECG monitor. We can also palpate the umbilical cord.
What are the indications for pulse oximetry?
So pulse oximetry is required when resuscitation is anticipated, or to confirm your perception of persistent central cyanosis, when supplemental oxygen is administered, when positive pressure ventilation is required. This is the pulse oximeter, in which we attach the sensor to the baby's right hand on the hypothenar eminence. So in the pulse oximeter we see that there is a light detector and there is a light source. So based on different lights they detect, and then the algorithm shows the saturation and heart rate of the baby. So we have to see the pre-ductal saturation after birth. At 1 minute it is 60 to 65%, 2 minutes 65 to 70%, 3 minutes 70 to 75%, 4 minutes 75 to 80%, 5 minutes 80 to 85%, and 10 minutes 85 to 95%. So this is the target saturation which should be obtained. If the target is not achieved, then we can use oxygen. So here we see that suppose baby has apnea, gasping, or heart rate is below 100. In these conditions we will use PPV. So PPV, saturation monitoring and ECG monitoring may be required.
Which images show the correct way to give free flow oxygen to a baby?
So we can see that free flow oxygen can be given by a T-piece resuscitator in B. First we can see this is the flow inflating bag in A. In B there is a T-piece resuscitator and also from the tail of a self-inflating bag with an open reservoir. So free flow oxygen delivery devices, we can see oxygen tubing, oxygen mask, flow inflating bag and mask, T-piece resuscitator and mask, open reservoir on a self-inflating bag. So we can adjust the oxygen concentration with compressed air. Inflow is from yellow hose, and then we can adjust using the knob, which is the flow meter.
What do you do if the baby has labored breathing or persistently low oxygen saturation?
So here we saw that if baby improves or if baby is well, then we will transfer the baby to the mother for routine care. But suppose if there is apnea or heart rate is below 100, then we will give positive pressure ventilation. So after giving positive pressure ventilation, if heart rate is below 100, then we will take further steps. But if heart rate improves and still there is labored breathing, then we will position and clear the airway, do suction monitoring, do give supplemental oxygen, and may require the CPAP. So here you can see this is CPAP. CPAP can be used by giving flow inflating bag or T-piece resuscitator.
Does the presence of meconium stained amniotic fluid change the approach to the initial steps?
Meconium stained fluid and a vigorous newborn. In these conditions, we have to simply use a bulb syringe to gently clear meconium stained secretions from the mouth and nose. Meconium stained fluid and a non-vigorous newborn. So suppose the newborn is non-vigorous, then according to previous recommendations, we had to do endotracheal suctioning, but nowadays that is not required. We use a bulb syringe to clear nose secretions and mouth secretions, and if the baby is not breathing or the heart rate is less than 100 after the initial steps, then we will proceed with PPV. So routine intubation for tracheal suction is not suggested.
What is positive pressure ventilation?
So positive pressure ventilation, if we see first, there are some components of positive pressure ventilation. When we directly give pressure to a neonate, that pressure is known as peak inspiratory pressure, which is the highest pressure administered with each breath. Then there is PEEP. PEEP is the positive and expiratory pressure. It is the gas pressure maintained in the lungs between breaths. So this PEEP helps the alveoli to remain open. It does not allow the alveoli to collapse. Then there is continuous positive airway pressure. It is the gas pressure maintained in the lungs between breaths when a baby is breathing spontaneously. So suppose baby is breathing spontaneously, it is known as CPAP. And suppose we are giving PEEP and also PIP, then it is called PEEP. So CPAP is usually termed for spontaneously breathing infants. Then inspiratory rate and inspiratory time. The duration of inspiratory phase is the inspiratory time. Usually inspiratory time to expiratory time ratio should be 1:2 to 1:3. Here we can see PEEP is 5, PIP is 20, and then there is the inspiratory time.
What are the indications for positive pressure ventilation?
So we saw that indications include apnea. Apnea means not breathing. Gasping. Gasping means breathing inadequately. Heart rate less than 100 beats per minute. And oxygen saturation below target range despite free flow oxygen or CPAP. So we saw previously we have seen the target range. Here we can see the target pre-ductal saturation. So if this saturation target is not achieved, then we can use oxygen or positive pressure ventilation. Here we can see self-inflating bag, which usually anesthetists use. It fills spontaneously and it does not compress gas or tight seal to fill. And this self-inflating bag is actually useful for giving PIP. It will not be useful for giving PEEP. This is the flow inflating bag. This is used by anesthetists during anesthesia. It requires compressed gas and tight seal to fill. This bag can give both PIP and PEEP. This is T-piece resuscitator. It requires compressed gas to function. Pressures are set by mechanical controls on the device. So it can give both PIP and PEEP. So we can see the self-inflating bag with a closed reservoir and open tail reservoir. Both bags re-inflate automatically without compressed gas. And these ambu bags, they also have a pressure control valve, and the pressure is 30 to 40 centimeter water. So maximum PIP which is recommended is 30 to 40. So here we can see the flow inflating bag with the tight seal. This is the T-piece resuscitator. So this is the position how to provide the PPV. We should stand along the head end of the baby. A shoulder roll is used to position the head and neck. And these are the different types of masks, the round one masks and the anatomical face masks. First one we can see is the correct size, anatomical. Second is incorrect small. Third is incorrect large. Fourth is incorrect upside down. Fifth is correct size round. Then sixth is incorrect small. So basically we have to choose the correct size of the anatomical or round mask so that proper PPV can be given and there is no air leak. Here we can see the cup, the chin and the mask first, and we bring the mask over the mouth and nose. So we have to start from the chin and then bring it over the mouth and nose. We have to maintain a seal with one hand technique using an anatomical mask or round mask. And this is the two hand technique with jaw thrust. So here we see the C and E technique, and this is the jaw thrust.
What concentration of oxygen should be used to start positive pressure ventilation?
If the gestational age is more than 35 weeks, then we use 21% oxygen. If it is less than 35 weeks, we use 21% to 30% oxygen. And the rate in the flow meter should be 10 liters per minute. So remember that for routine, for term infants, we have to resuscitate with room air only. This is a graph which shows the time to first cry in asphyxiated newborns resuscitated with room air or 100% oxygen. So we can see that those resuscitated with 100% oxygen are having late cry as compared to those with room air. Here you can see breath counts should be given at rate of 40 to 60 breaths per minute. So we count like breathe 2 3, breathe 2 3. So we count the rhythm loud to maintain the correct rate.
Which of these devices is a self-inflating bag, a flow-inflating bag, a T-piece resuscitator?
So we can see that A is a flow inflating bag, B is self-inflating bag, and C is T-piece resuscitator.
Which is correct application of mask?
So in B, anatomical mask is used upside down. In C, a round mask is used, but it is of small size. So A is the correct size of and placement of anatomical face mask. Now suppose PPV we are giving and there is no improvement in the heart rate. We will do the corrective steps. So the mnemonic is MR SOPA. MR is mask adjustment. We reapply the mask and we consider the two hand technique. Second is repositioning the airway, in which we place the head neutral or slightly extended. We again try PPV and reassess chest movement. Suppose there is no improvement after 15 seconds, then we will do suction of the mouth and nose using a bulb syringe or suction catheter. We will open the mouth and lift the jaw forward. We will again give PPV and reassess chest movement. After 15 seconds, we will increase the pressure by 5 to 10 centimeter water. Maximum allowed is 40 centimeters of water. Again we will give PPV and reassess chest movement. If still there is no improvement in the heart rate, then we will place an endotracheal tube or laryngeal mask. So here we can see this is the inadequate mask seal on the face, and it may result in ineffective ventilation as there is air leak between the cheek and bridge of the nose. So we have to place the mask correctly. We have to adjust the CPAP by turning the cap on the T-piece. This is administering face mask CPAP by T-piece, and then diagram B shows flow inflating bag. The manometer will show the amount of CPAP administered, and we have to maintain a tight seal while giving the CPAP. So this is the CPAP giving to preterm with nasal prongs. So we saw that we can give CPAP with T-piece resuscitator, with flow inflating bag, and also with nasal prongs. We can also give with nasal mask. Here we can see that while giving PPV, air may enter the stomach. So we have to insert a Riley's tube or feeding tube to remove the extended stomach. We have to measure the correct insertion depth for an orogastric tube. In this example, the tube should be inserted 28 centimeter. So we have to measure the distance from the bridge of the nose to the earlobe, and from the earlobe to a point halfway between the xiphoid process, which is the lower tip of the sternum, and the umbilicus.
Resuscitation with positive pressure ventilation using an endotracheal tube.
So now suppose there is no improvement after giving PPV and heart rate remains below 100. Now we have to insert the endotracheal tube. So this is the airway anatomy. There is glottis, larynx, trachea, carina, bronchi, and lungs. So we have to insert the endotracheal tube just below the glottis. This is the laryngoscopic view of vocal cords and surrounding structures. We can see the epiglottis, the tongue, vocal cords, glottis, and below there is esophagus. So basically we have to lift the glottis, epiglottis, and insert the endotracheal tube. So this is the neonatal airway equipment required for endotracheal intubation. Neonatal endotracheal tube with a uniform diameter. This tube has a vocal cord guide that is used to approximate the insertion depth. We can see these two lines. So the vocal cord should be placed between these two lines, single line and the double line. The tube is inserted so that the vocal cords are positioned in the space between the double line and single line. The vocal cord guide is only an approximation and may not reliably predict the correct insertion depth. So this is the size recommended for below 1000 grams, 2.5, 1000 to 2000, 3, and more than 2000, 3.5. Similarly, below 28 weeks, 2.5, 28 to 34, 3 weeks, and more than 34 weeks gestational age, 3.5 size endotracheal tube is used. This size is the diameter, internal diameter of the endotracheal tube. This is the optional stellate, which will improve endotracheal tube stiffness, and it will maintain the curvature during the intubation. We have to make sure that the stellate tip does not cross the side hole. So first is the correct position in which line of sight is clear. The tongue will be lifted by the laryngoscope blade. Second is incorrect, and third is also incorrect, because in second there is hyperextension and in third there is flexion. So this is the laryngoscope not inserted too far, tongue and posterior pharynx obscure view, and in another figure you can see that laryngoscope is inserted too far, only the esophagus is visible. Here we can see that suctioning of the secretions is done during laryngoscope to prevent, because secretions may prevent the vision. Then there is insertion of the endotracheal tube into the right side of the mouth. So we hold the laryngoscope with the left hand and we insert the endotracheal tube from the right side. We stabilize the tube against the baby's palate or cheek while carefully removing the laryngoscope. Then one assistant will remove the stellate while the operator holds the tube in place.
How much time should be allowed for an intubation attempt?
So if one person is trying to attempt intubation, maximum time should be allowed is 30 seconds. After that, saturation may fall, there may be bradycardia. So another attempt can be made a little later after the baby's heart rate and saturation stabilizes.
What are the indicators that the tube is in the trachea?
So first we will see that there is audible and equal breath sounds near both axilla during positive pressure ventilation after intubation. There should be symmetrical chest movement with each breath. Little or no air leak from the mouth during PPV. Decreased or absent air entry over the stomach. Rapidly increasing heart rate. Exhaled CO2, we can measure exhaled CO2 by the capnography. Also we see there is increasing in the saturation. Here we can see that we are listening the equal breath sounds in both axilla, and also we auscultate over the stomach. There should not be any sound over the stomach.
How deeply should the tube be inserted within the trachea?
So we have to measure the nasotragal length. So nasotragal length is measured from middle of the nasal septum to the ear tragus, and we have to add 1 centimeter to this measurement. And this we can see the depth for every gestational age. The depth is mentioned. Basically we have to decide the depth based upon the symmetrical chest movement and audible equal breath sounds in both axilla. And we have to mark the upper lip, mark the level of the endotracheal tube at the upper lip. So we can see these are the stickings, how to cut the stickings and fix the endotracheal tube. This is correct placement of the endotracheal tube with tip adjacent to the second thoracic vertebra. And in second position, second figure, we can see that there is incorrect placement. The tip of the endotracheal tube is too far. So it is touching the carina and approaching the right main stem bronchus, and the left lung is collapsed, and there is hyperaeration of the right lung. So sudden deterioration, suppose there is sudden deterioration after intubation, then the mnemonic is DOPE. DOPE is first is displaced endotracheal tube, second is obstructed endotracheal tube, third is pneumothorax, and fourth is equipment failure. So if there is displaced endotracheal tube, we have to re-intubate. If there is obstructed endotracheal tube, obstruction can be due to blood clot or secretions, so we may do some suctioning. If there is no improvement, then we'll have to re-intubate. If there is pneumothorax, then we have to do remove the gas, and then equipment failure, we have to check the equipment, the ventilator.
Which illustration shows the view of the oral cavity that you should see if you have the laryngoscope correctly placed for intubation?
So we can see that in first diagram the vocal cords are not seen, also not in B. In C we can see the vocal cords clearly. So C is the correct.
What about chest compressions?
Suppose the heart rate still even after intubation remains below 60, we have to start chest compressions.
What are the indications for chest compressions?
So chest compressions are indicated when the heart rate is less than 60 beats per minute after at least 30 seconds of positive pressure ventilation that inflates the lungs as evidenced by chest movement with ventilation. In most cases, you should have given at least 30 seconds of ventilation through a properly inserted endotracheal tube or laryngeal mask. So we can see that this is the method of chest compression. In first diagram we can see the compression and then relaxation. Compression should be done from the head end of the bed. And where would you apply the chest compression? So first is top of sternum, B is just below nipple, C is over ziphered, so the answer is B, just below nipples we have to apply the chest compression. Here you can see the landmarks for chest compression. Chest compression can be done using two thumbs from the head end or from the side of the bed. Thumbs are placed over the 2/3 of the sternum and hands encircle the chest. And 1/3 of the anteroposterior diameter of the chest should be compressed. This is the ratio of compression to ventilation rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and breathe, and 1 and 2 and 3 and breathe, and 1 and 2 and 3 and breathe. So this will allow enough ventilation and compression.
What oxygen concentration should be used with positive pressure ventilation during chest compressions?
So previously we saw that we were using, for more than 35 weeks gestational age, we used room air, and for preterms we use 21% to 30%. But if chest compressions are required, then we have to increase the FiO2 to 100%.
When should you check the baby's heart rate after starting compressions?
So after intubation we have to give at least 30 seconds of PPV. If heart rate is less than 60, then only we have to start chest compressions. Suppose we have started chest compressions, then at least 60 seconds of chest compressions and ventilations should be given. Only then we should again reassess the baby's heart.
When do you stop chest compressions?
Suppose heart rate spontaneously increases more than 60 per minute, then the chest compressions can be stopped.
What are the medications?
So suppose even after giving adequate chest compression and ventilation there is no improvement in the heart rate and heart rate is still persistently below 60, then we have to give the medication, which is epinephrine. The dose is intravenous we can give, or we can give intraosseous, 0.1 to 0.3 ml per kg, or we can give endotracheal 0.5 to 1 ml per kg. Here we can see that epinephrine is used in 1:10,000 concentration. We can use IV or intraosseous, and we have to repeat every 3 to 5 minutes if heart rate remains less than 60 beats per minute. This is the volume expander. Suppose we expect that baby is having low volume or there is hypotension, then we can use a volume expander. Preferable is normal saline, which we give with IV or intraosseous route. Suppose there is suspected anemia, then we can give O negative packed red blood cells. For this we need 30 to 60 ml syringe, and we have to administer over 5 to 10 minutes.
For how long should you continue?
If there is a confirmed absence of heart rate after 10 minutes of resuscitation, it is reasonable to stop resuscitative efforts, although 2020 guidelines recommendations are saying that we can even continue up to 20 minutes. So we can see then this is the procedure of umbilical catheterization. Here the umbilical vein travels through the liver to join the central venous circulation, and this is the site for anteromedial surface of tibia is the site for intraosseous fluids. Here we can see that intraosseous needle in the bone marrow cavity. Infused medications and fluids reach the central venous circulation quickly. Almost all drugs can be given through the intraosseous pathway. Thank you.